Let me
Still
know
waiting.
if it
Yeah.
still waiting. Oh, okay.
Yep. All right, you're live in YouTube.
Thank you very much.
I will start the go live button right now. And you're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Community Office Hours for Vault. It's been a while since I've had one of these, but I think this will be the last one of the year. We're excited for this team to be here with us because it's a really interesting topic that's near and dear to me, especially as I did my developer stint at some point in time. For those who are not familiar with Community Office Hours, welcome. We're happy to have you here. If you have a question, please join in, drop it in chat. We'd love for you to participate, but keep in mind our community guidelines as we do. We'll post a link to that as well in chat. Be professional, be welcoming, and we'll get started. Now, let's begin with some introductions. We've got a full house today. It's like the Brady Bunch view. Brady Bunch view. Gee, I keep saying that. But anyway, so we have a whole bunch of people on this call today, and let's have some introductions. I'll start with Matt, and then Matt, if you could popcorn it to someone else.
Sure, thanks, Rosemary. Well, hi, everyone. I am Matt Ryan. I'm a product manager on our new Vault DevX team. Also, I will piggyback on what Rosemary mentioned. This subject and discipline is something that is near and dear to me as well. And I think everyone on the team will find that a common thread. But yeah, we're really excited to kick off this new team at HashiCorp, and I will pass it over to Akshay, who's our engineering manager.
Hi, everyone. I'm Akshay Pai. I'm the engineering manager for the Vault DevX team. Really excited for this first community office hours that we are running as a team. I'll popcorn off to Anna.
Hey everyone, my name's Anna Dyaroff. I am an engineer on the Vault DevX team, and I started at HashiCorp in August, I think, so 5-6 months. I don't know, time flies. And I will popcorn it to Val.
Hi, I'm Val Conklin. I am also an engineer on the Vault Developer Experience team, and yeah, I've been here since about June, so this is my first time being on one of these office hours, and it's exciting. Let's pass it to Anton.
Hi, I'm Anton Novarchenko. I'm also fairly new here, just less than a month at HashiCorp, also on the Vault Developer Experience team. Very happy to join here, and first time doing this office hours. And on to Vinny.
Hi, everybody. I'm Vinny. I joined roughly the same time as Anton. I'm an engineer on the DevX team, and we're all really excited to show you our app that we built. So with that, I'll send it back to Matt.
Cool. Thanks, Vinny.
Did Roy introduce himself before I forget?
I think not. Hi, everyone. My name is Roy. I'm an engineer on the Vault core team. And I won't be doing a demo today. I'm just here to hang out, and if any questions need answered, I'm here to answer questions.
Yeah. So if you have any particular Vault questions that are not developer related, we can also answer them. Thank you, Roy. All right. With that, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about what is Vault Developer Experience, what this team is doing?
Sure, indeed. Yeah, so I think as we went around, we're all relatively new to HashiCorp. And then, as I mentioned, when I started, this is a entirely new team at HashiCorp that's really now focused on pinning down the developer experience, making developers' lives easier, and just building that into the product itself. So our charter in a nutshell is to, one, make developers' lives progressively easier. So we want to put a lot of the heavy lifting into the tools and resources. So everything from client SDKs to Vault Agent to all of our public resources, sample apps. We'll get a quick demo of that in a minute. But our aim is really to save time, number one, and then two, once you've integrated an app or a service, we want to foster your ability to expand on existing integrations. So let's say you've conquered the secret zero scenario, you've set up your auth, great. Maybe you're working with KV or some static secrets or moved into dynamic secrets. We also want to make that experience as you grow and as your business grows, as your team grows, to make that integration as easy as possible. So we want you to be able to take advantage of new capabilities like ADP, advanced data protection. So if you want to, down the line, if you want to grow your integration to have encryption or take advantage of Vault Agent, we want to build that into the developer workflow. So that's a 30,000 foot perspective of where we are. We're just getting started. We're just a few months in. So we're all ears on feedback across the board. So if you're a developer in a large enterprise or a single developer on an OSS instance, we'd love to hear from you. And that I'll kick it over to Val, who is going to start with a demo in our one of our early releases is some optimizations in our Vault Go client library.
Yeah, so we're just going to show a demo real quick of this. It's just a new way of kind of doing logins using the Go API SDK. So the Go client library, basically. So let's take a look at that first login method demo there, Rosemary. Thank you.
All right, it may be a little blurry for those who are on the stream. It will render. Just give it a moment.
Hi, this is Val Conklin from the Vault Developer Experience team. Let's take a look at the new login method for the Go client library. Some recent research from the UX team is showing that developers, even those that were advanced or intermediate users of Vault, significantly struggled with figuring out how to integrate the Vault client library into their application code. So let's first take a look at why that is. So here's an example demonstrating the kind of basic flow that our users are trying to do within their application. First, they need to set up a client for interacting with Vault, authenticate to the Vault server with the auth method of their choice, and fetch a secret after they've logged in. It sounds straightforward enough, but what does it actually take for our user to implement this authenticate function here? Let's take a look at how they used to have to do this auth method before our shiny new login function existed. Okay, here it is. This is an example of the kind of code that a user of Vault would have to come up with themselves to generate the login request to Vault, if they could even figure out how to do that. In the UX research, we found many users searched our SDK docs for a long time, hoping to find a login or authenticate function, but they couldn't find what they were looking for, and their IDE's autocomplete wasn't much help either. There was a client.auth object, but nothing related to auth backends that they could see. Eventually, after searching a bunch of other websites outside the HashiCorp docs, they would eventually stumble upon a gist or a blog post showing this, client.logical.write to the login endpoint, which prompted a couple, wait, what's a logical? And things like, wait, I just have to build the entire request myself? Bummer. So if we scroll up again, you can see that in order to craft the STS request headers that are required by the AWS auth backend, the user would have to figure out how to generate a credentials chain and make the call to STS for the signed request header themselves. This is for the users who were just interested in getting Vault working, probably not learning the intricacies of how AWS STS works. Also, as you can see at the bottom here, the client.set token, the user has to remember to call that with the response that they just got back from the login method. Otherwise, or for the login endpoint. Otherwise, their client won't actually be logged in. So this is where our new login method comes in. So this was the before, and now here is the after. The user just now has to construct an AWS auth object, which conforms to an interface that knows how to do a login. Then the user just calls client.auth.login, making use of that otherwise not much used auth object that shows up at the top of most code completion tools, and taking care of all that hard STS stuff behind the scenes for them. They don't have to craft the headers themselves anymore. And the login method also sets the token, so they don't need to worry about it. In this example, I'm not using the response from login, but if I wanted to, I could use it as the input for a lifetime watcher, which is the way that our Go SDK manages token renewal. Now, this new AWS Auth Constructor, if you look at the Go doc here, it actually takes functional options, which is an idiomatic pattern that many Go developers are familiar with. Currently, we're using just all default values here since we didn't specify anything, including the default Vault role name that the AWS backend uses if you don't specify one during login. But if you want to specify something different, then you can see that there's a list of supported options there with role, with mount path, etc. that you can use. So for those familiar with the AWS Auth backend, there's a few different ways that you can work with it. And so we provide all of those as options. But users that aren't interested in those details don't have to worry about them. So maybe they'll just use, something like maybe the with EC2 auth, because they're not using the IAM one after all. And then if they're using the EC2 auth, maybe they want to use the named nunts, something like that. They can use those if they want to. And the login method will take care of all the rest. And so the other nice thing about this that you'll notice is that the AWS Auth, as well as each of the other Auth implementations we have, are in their own Go module. This makes it so that users who are just doing app role auth, for instance, don't have to bloat their dependencies by importing all of the AWS SDK stuff when they're not even going to use it. So yeah, there you have it. You've got the before, all these things that the user themselves had to worry about, and then the after. Pretty simple. While we only looked at the AWS Auth implementation of it today, there is also one for app role, Kubernetes, UserPass, GCP, and Azure, all of which take care of something difficult for developers who just wanted to integrate with Vault. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So that was really interesting to me because, as you pointed out, no one knew what a logical interface was. It was a lot to unroll there. But something that I guess for the entire team, not just for Val, but something that we get a lot of questions around is, when should I be using something like Vault Agent versus something like what you showed today, which is using the Go SDK? Is there a reason why a developer may want to choose one over the other?
It's a great question. I think that it kind of depends on the use case. Some people might want to use Vault Agent because, for instance, maybe their whole setup is in Kubernetes, and so they can take advantage of the Vault Agent Kubernetes injector, which takes care of some of that stuff for you. But then there are some like backends auth backends, for instance, that I think that Vault Agent doesn't support, and so and other things like that. And so in those situations, you might have to kind of just do it in the inside the application code. Yeah, it kind of depends on the use case.
Yeah, and I can just add that one of the things that we're actively looking at now that we're our team now is up and running is what's that prescriptive guidance between when should a developer pick up and build to leverage Vault Agent versus when should you actually opt for a client library, and then what down the line, what is the intersection between those two? Can they work together potentially? And those are things that we're not just in the DevX team, but with other parts of Vault are actively looking to map out and understand, and hopefully that will result down the line in something that in our docs and then even in our kind of in our reference material, it will become more clear and obvious when you may want to pick one versus the other. But we're still sorting out exactly what those use cases are, how they're unfolding. So I don't know if that's a satisfying answer, but it's definitely something that's top of mind, I think, for the entire org, is to sort out how to kind of make sure that guidance is very clear when a developer, depending on their architecture, number one, and then also what stack they're using and what are their use cases. So.
One of the things that you mentioned before, Matt, was ADP, Advanced Data Protection. And in which case, from a security view, maybe it makes sense to encrypt, decrypt right in the application itself. In which case, I definitely see that this client would be very helpful, right? Versus the agent, which you may not be able to pass the right credentials for encryption, decryption anyway. So you may just choose to do this directly with Vault. One of the questions that one of the points that one of the folks in the chat brought up was that they're using the GitLab Jot backend. Do you have any plans to support other auth methods, or is there a way that someone can help contribute auth methods supported as part of the Go SDK?
Sorry, I had trouble getting the mute button. So no, great question. We're actually, again, I don't have a satisfying answer for that yet, but as we're again, I'll come back to that same talking point that in our new team, we're forging out our roadmap, our set of priorities, understanding our dependencies across Vault and the company. And that's definitely, I can say that the use of JOT tokens is definitely something we're hearing more of as we're talking to a variety of customers, and definitely something we're thinking about. And we'd love to dive in more to understand the use case too, if that's possible. So I'd throw that out there too, that we're as I mentioned earlier, we're all ears on trying to, deepen our understanding of the variety of real world scenarios out there.
Also, because the way that it's implemented is just like this new login method is that it just takes the interface of like a auth struct basically. I think that, yeah, if community members did like find that, oh, this is the backend that I really need help with, and someone wanted to contribute something, I think it wouldn't be too hard for us to review that and see if it can fit in.
Yeah. And for those who are newer to this discussion, right, you're an application developer and your platform team just told you you have to start using Vault. Can one of you explain a little bit about the workflow? Like, what are the things that you as a developer need to do? Forget about code, but what is the workflow that a developer needs in order to extract a secret from Vault? Like, let's say a set of database credentials.
I would say that this is where our next demo actually kind of comes in, is being able to like just get whatever secrets backend you're going to be working with and whatever auth backend you're going to be working with Vault set up, and then being able to quickly fit that into some application code. That's basically what our next demo is going to be. Is we're going to show this sample app that you can just quickly get up and running, and then play with it, tinker with it yourself, and kind of experience, how to fetch static secrets. I think the KV v2 static secrets is probably the first thing you want to try working with, just because it's simple. But our demo also showcases the database credentials with dynamic secrets, as well as token renewal too. So maybe we should show that little demo app.
Yes, Val did an awesome introduction to the demo app. I also like to mention that it's going to use a lot of the authentication work that was showcased earlier, and we'll skip over that part, but yeah, it's mostly going to focus on how to fetch static secrets and dynamic secrets. Hi, I'm Anton Avershenko from HashiCorp Vault DevX team, and today I'm going to talk to you about our Hello World application for interacting with Vault in Golang. So let's begin by cloning the application and seeing what's inside. Most of the Vault-related logic is going to be in vault.go. Vault renewal.go is where we have token and credential renewal logic. Main has the initialization code for Vault and database, as well as the HTTP handlers. Docker compose.yaml, it houses the entire app stack for the web app, as well as all of its dependencies that you can see here. To start the application and all of its dependencies, we're going to run docker compose up-d. This may take a bit longer for you depending on what Docker needs to download. After this is done, we can verify that all 5 containers are started by running docker ps, and you can see they're in healthy state here. Let's take a look at the containers that have just come up. At the center, we have Vault dev instance with custom configurations needed for the application. Next to it is a trusted orchestrator. It will authenticate with Vault and then provide wrapped secret IDs for the web app to authenticate with Vault. This is often done with Kubernetes, Terraform, or similar, but we're modeling here with a container. Secure server is just an Nginx container that will respond with 200 if correct API key is provided. And the database is basically a Postgres database that our web app is interested in. Finally, we have the actual web app that authenticates to Vault using Aws Auth method. On startup, it will also fetch database credentials from Vault and use them to connect to the database. So here's what the code looks like. We first initialize the Vault client, and we pass it the environment variables that have been provided to our program by Docker Compose. We will need to periodically renew the login token in a separate Go routine, and I'll talk about it later. Now onto the database. In order to connect to the database, we need to first fetch the credentials from Vault and then pass them here. And similarly, we will also need to renew the database credentials periodically. Finally, we have a couple HTTP endpoints just to test our functionality, both static and dynamic secrets. Here we have our internal Vault constructor method. We simply pass the Vault address and call the login method. The login method is where the app role authentication takes place. For app role, we need a role ID and a secret ID. The secret ID is fetched from a file that had been populated by our trusted orchestrator. And we pass the app role auth to the client's login method. All right, now that our service is up and running, let's try sending it a request. So I'm going to set up a Docker logs on the top part and follow it. And on the bottom, I will curl one of our endpoints, which is the payments. This is the endpoint that will demonstrate how static secrets are acquired. If you take a look at the logs, you will see that we are getting a secret API key from Vault, and we successfully acquired it and processed the payments endpoint. Now, what it looks like behind the scenes is for each payments request, we're fetching a secret API key from Vault, and it's pretty simple since we already authenticated with it. And then we're using the secret API key to talk to our secure server. And here's what the code looks like. Simply get the secret API key, extract it from the secret hash map, and pass it as a request header to our service. And then get back the response. This is what the get secret API key looks like. We're calling client logical read and passing it the API key path, which was an environment variable passed to our program. And we're extracting the data back. Let's try another request. This one is going to be for an endpoint called products, and we're going to use a get. This one will demonstrate dynamic secrets, or more specifically, dynamic database credentials. So the actual request is going to be quite simple. We're just getting the products and we're fetching them from the database. But the more interesting part is going to happen at the start of the program when we are fetching the dynamic database credentials. Here's what the code looks like for get products. As I mentioned, it's quite simple. Simply fetch them from the database. And this is get database credentials that gets invoked at the start. The API to read the dynamic secret from the database is actually the same as for static secrets, but we're passing a different Vault path. And after we fetch the secret, we need to unmarshal it from JSON, which is fairly standard. The interesting part here is what happens behind the scenes. Vault will actually create a dynamic set of secrets and instantiate a new user inside the database with the same set of credentials that it gives to us so that we can log in successfully. The last interesting feature of our Hello Vault app that I wanted to mention today is the renewal of database credentials and authentication tokens. So anytime you create a secret in Vault, it is a good practice for the secrets to expire at some point, and that means they need to be renewed. So if you take a look at the logs for the authentication tokens, you can see that we log in, acquire a token, and then periodically renew it. And then when we can no longer renew it, we log in again. Similarly, for the database credentials, we acquire temporary credentials from Vault and try to renew them at some cadence. And when that's no longer possible, we try to acquire them again. It may be easier to demonstrate with this diagram. So there are two Go routines, one for Vault authentication renewal and one for database credential renewal. The renewal cadences are governed by token TTLs or time to live, as well as the max TTLs. So when we're approaching close to the token TTL, we will trigger a renew event with some kind of grace period before TTL expires. And similarly, when we're approaching max TTL, we will have another event notifying us that we need to re-log in or reacquire the credentials. The colors here represent different token values or different database credentials. Now let's take a look at the code. So for renew login periodically, we have essentially an infinite loop, which first tries to renew the token until its max time to live. And then when that function returns, we will try to log in again. The database credential renewal logic is pretty similar. We also have an infinite loop where we call the renew helper and then fetch the database credentials and reconnect using these credentials. This is our helper function, renew until max TTL. It uses something called lifetime watcher, part of the Golang Vault SDK. It's quite a useful utility that will automatically renew the given secret and notify us when it has been renewed. And when it can no longer be renewed, it will notify us again with a different channel. Thank you very much for listening. Please check out the Hello Vault Go app on GitHub, and we look forward to hearing your questions and comments.
That was awesome. I have many questions. And I think it's mostly because a lot of the development, if you're not doing Go, for example, you would want to know some of the practices and some of the patterns around some of the things you wrote, Anton. So one of the questions that I think we get quite a bit is how long should you set a timeout for the application to connect to Vault? Is there something that you should be considering before you set it? Is there a default that you set in your sample application or you can recommend?
That's a good question. Maybe I'll defer it to Roy.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about that either, unfortunately. So we'll have to, yeah.
You know what? TBD. So we'll take a look. If you have suggestions and you're watching the replay, please post on Discuss. A number of folks are curious about what is a reasonable timeout to set. Is there any suggestions that anyone could make about retry handling? So how many times or any kind of approach that you should take to retry handling? If, let's say, your application can't connect to Vault and retrieve the credentials, what kind of retry handling should the application have in place? Or is that something maybe in the lifetime watcher? I wonder as well.
So I think, and maybe I shouldn't, I'm not super sure about this, but I think that the agent currently uses exponential backoff and has retry logic built into it. Yeah, in terms of the explicit type of retry, I'm not too sure on that, but that code is public, so we can take a look at that. I believe it is exponential backoff though, so pretty standard exponential backoff.
Got it. Okay. That is actually super helpful to know, because if there are any questions that an application developer might have as they're implementing their connection to Vault, maybe the Vault agent has some good patterns in place as well. I guess one thing is, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'll just otherwise say that, like, I think that taking a look at what we've got there in that Hello Vault Go repo kind of shows the, like, what actually happens when the renewal fails and it's time to log in again. You can actually see like what you would do next and how that loop works, and probably add maybe more specific error handling to it, and kind of exponential backup and things like that into that loop. It's probably what I would go to there. Also, one more thing that I was going to add that I forgot to mention when I was kind of introing this was that this is our Go app that we've created for this Go repo, hello-vault-go on under HashiCorp on GitHub, but we are actually in the process of making a C# one as well. So .NET folks will soon be able to see that. And then we're going to make other languages as well along the way. And also probably be adding more API endpoints to this app where you can hit it and you can see all the different other functionality that Vault has as well. Like we've talked about, maybe having an endpoint for encryption as a service, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I can actually come back. I was just chatting with some other people on the team that a general rule of thumb for secrets is between 30 as a default. Now, of course, it varies, but your mileage will vary. But 30 to 60 minutes is what for a TTL in general.
Yeah, the Hello Vault application actually has a very short, like artificially short TTLs, just to demonstrate how the renewal logic works. But it is kind of commented out there.
Yeah, I mean, who would want their database credentials rotated every 5 seconds? Some you never know. But it's actually something interesting, Anton, you brought up as part of this, right? How should you think about your secrets? Most of the time, not most, but a number of folks will defer to their operations team to set up like a database, like some dynamic database credentials with some TTL. What should you be thinking as a developer about how you should be renewing? Like, how should you balance the time it takes for you to renew the TTLs versus what your operations team or whoever your Vault configuration team has already set for you?
Well, for like the way the database credentials are renewed, it actually happens kind of simultaneously. So Vault will generate a new set of credentials on the database side at the time when you try to read the credentials by the application. So like as long as, I guess, it is within reasonable timeframes, like not within like milliseconds. So as long as your TTL is like minutes or I don't know, like half an hour, like then that should definitely be reasonable. The other thing to consider is that this token renewal logic, and I'm not really showcasing it in the video, but if you look in the code, it's a little bit more explicit there. It introduces a bit more complexity in terms of your code management. So you need to worry about synchronizing the database connection with a mutex, and like, because when it's renewed, like it's going to be replaced with a new connection pointer. So like that part needs to be thought out.
Awesome. Good to know. And one question that I got from a couple of folks who are Java.NET devs, but what are the fallback mechanisms that someone should consider if an application can't retrieve the dynamic credentials from Vault, right? There's a small window of time maybe that the credentials are being rotated, for example, and it can't retrieve them for some reason. Is there a fallback mechanism that someone should think about in their code? Should it just be fail fast? Should they be caching something? Do you have any recommendations on that?
So if I understand correctly, the lifetime watcher, it actually has a pretty generous grace period. So like, let's suppose that token TTL is 5 minutes, it will probably alert you at like 3 minutes or 4 minutes that you should start renewing the token. And that should give plenty of time to do any sort of retry logic. And, I guess all else failing, then a new token can be created at that point. But yeah, I guess, does anyone else have thoughts on this?
Well, I believe the lifetime watcher and that whole renewal logic stuff is only available for Go developers, actually. So, Anna, do you have something to say about the .NET side of things?
Not particularly. So yeah, the lifetime watcher is only available in the Go SDK, and that's been, I think, a sticking point for .NET developers because it doesn't exist in the community supported libraries. So I'm working on the .NET sample app right now, and I'm still looking into kind of the patterns that and the C# developers are using to do these types of things. And so I haven't gotten that far yet. So that's a TBD question.
Yeah, it's good to know, though, that if you do want to take a look at an interesting example or perhaps something that might be helpful, to examine the lifetime watcher for any particular logic in that. Because if you can't access Vault or for some reason you don't have access to the database secret, it will partly depend. It seems to partly depend on your application and how it behaves, but also what you expect it to do. There is a final question I got from another person separately, not during the office hours. But one of the questions is, what are the important errors, specifically the Vault errors, that we should surface in the application? So what are the common ones that you recommend that we should surface so that someone understands that this might be a Vault issue? Is it surface every Vault error? Is it only surface the ones that would be important for retrieving secrets? Can someone explain a little bit about that?
Do you have any insights there, Roy?
So it's sort of a complicated question because Vault specific errors, there are only sort of a subset of Vault specific errors that are necessarily relevant to end users as they understand it. Like if Vault's core has a particular issue, then more or less the behavior is always going to be, you should retry it unless there's some sort of issue where Vault itself is down or some privileged process is happening whereby you can't do something, and in that case there's some sort of larger problem going on. Usually not always, but it's usually errors come wrapped in logic from the SDK side of things or particular backends, if for relevant backends that you're querying instead of core itself. So that's sort of, what I've got.
Awesome. Thank you. We also had someone mention in the chat that typically they detect errors with about half the TTLF. So that gives you about TTL divided by 2 time to figure out why things aren't working. So that allows for error detection while renewing. So even if you're not using the Go SDK, for example, a general rule of thumb is TTL divided by 2, whatever your TTL is. And as Matt pointed out, it could be somewhere between 30 to 60 minutes. So it's interesting to know. I don't think we have any. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say also, not to make any promises or anything, I'll let Matt make promises there, but I do know that on the topic of the error stuff, that error handling and I don't know, having more expressive error messages, having more clear, things coming back from the Vault API is the sort of thing that our team is interested in working on. Like we understand that there's a little bit of like, I don't know, sometimes lack of transparency of what's actually going on that might be helpful for application developers to know. So just know that we have those things in our thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. And I can just add on that we're absolutely one of the things that we're, again, I'll come back to that the same refrain of we're still new and figuring out the mechanics of Vault and everything else. But the error standardization is one area we're very keen on. And then we're also sensitive to the idea that we need to be the types of errors and what gets returned need to be, we want you to be able to fail fast. That's kind of the ethos of where we're headed, but we also don't want to leak information clearly. So we want it to be, and so whether it's a new standard of error codes or that map in where we have them in docs or in response objects to be determined, but it's definitely, as Val said, something that we're actively looking at. And then it's paired with our CLI SDKs and the API itself. So there's a kind of an untangling there that we want to sort out. And I just last thing I'll say on that topic is we are sensitive and are, as we're doing kind of understanding some of the friction that developers run into today, that does seem to be an area of focus that we want to make sure that we're prioritizing. So yeah, no promises yet, but that's definitely something that is top of mind for us.
Always improving, but also, Vault Diagnosis, great command too. This is a small plug. It's on the operator side, but hey, if you have something similar on the developer side, it'd be super convenient. Okay, so one of the things that we've heard a little bit, or something that the Nomad team has been working on, is an open API spec for Nomad. Do you think this is something that could be useful for Vault? Is this something that you're perhaps investigating as part of the developer experience team?
I can take that quick. And feel free to jump in others, but yes. So the short answer is yes. We've actually started working with the Nomad team to compare notes, and which is great. And we want to, as we start to look at, I think Val mentioned earlier, we're also building some proof of concepts in C# and in Java, and we're definitely keen to start ironing out some of the quirks involved in that and building out. So, and actually, we have some customers that are interested in partnering with us to test out and give us feedback, which is fantastic. So yeah, so the short answer is definitely no definitive timelines yet or when something might be available, but we're absolutely thinking about that and looking to partner with other teams inside the company to align on best practices and standards there too.
I think that was the last question that I had, but I did have one more. Is there, before I get to the very, very last one, is there anything that all of you would like to mention to the audience or anybody who would be watching this recording? Any calls to action, any questions that you might have?
Well, I can just say we're all, again, I'll repeat myself, that we're all ears on feedback. So good, bad, and ugly, we will take it. We will happily accept it. And we're still, as I said, we're still new and figuring out the rhythms here, but we're all in on saving time and making these integrations easier. And it's interesting that the developer experience itself, I think we've got the right team here. I'll just plug the team that the passion for solving those problems, which is one of the reasons I joined HashiCorp to begin with, is definitely front and center in the team. So hopefully that was, at least you got a taste of that in the demos, but feedback is what I would say to answer that, Rosemary.
Awesome. And where's the best place for folks to reach out with feedback or any questions or any commentary?
I would say right now, GitHub issues on any of the repositories. That's where we're actually kind of doubling down there, and then forums as well. And then we're also, I think, all up as an organization figuring out what are those right intake channels too. So, but for the time being, you can't go wrong with, I think, on the GitHub issues.
Awesome. And these are GitHub issues on either the sample app, Go SDK. Is there anything that you will not like it, that will be difficult for you to parse through? Is there a preferred
no,
repository?
anything. So
Okay.
we've got this. Anton's demo falls into our new Hello Vault repository, which is, again, please feedback there. And then that's restricted to Go now, but more coming. More languages are coming. But yeah, that any repository, we're broadening our collection, and so yeah, anything there. And then as we get a little further along, we'll figure out how we can optimize that feedback, those feedback channels. But yeah, GitHub issues on any repository and the forums.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Vault DevX team and Roy, for joining us and patiently answering our questions. There were quite a few of them. And I know some of the Vault folks were also hanging out in chat as well, helping out with questions. So for those who are watching the replay, you'll find some of the links as well as the information in the description. And if you do want to reach out with feedback, as Matt said, any of the Hello Vault repositories or the forum on Discuss, feel free to drop your feedback. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll hopefully have more community office hours at the beginning of next year. With that, bye everyone.